We're on. Hi, I'm here in Queenstown with Bobby Cappuccio, co-founder of PTA Global. Bobby, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Bobby, we've been here in Queenstown this weekend and it's been fantastic. One of the great things that you brought to life, if you will, was the way you were able to explain how movement and emotions are intertwined. Can you maybe elaborate a little for our viewers on that?
There are a lot of researchers who, for the past 30 years, have been working on this information in this area. Over the past 5 to 10 years, 5 years more specifically, we've been able to see into the brain. So we've learned more about the brain in the past 10 years than we have in all of human history. And that's a very accurate statement. And what appears to be happening, what we appear to be discovering, is that the way we move determines which centers of the brain are more or less active. And certain centers of the brain seem to be most active during certain emotional states. For example, when we're feeling stressed or when we're feeling anxious or depressed, certain brain centers on the right side, the frontal lobes, they're more active. But then on the complete opposite side of your brain are areas that seem to be more active when we're feeling happy, when we're feeling excited, a sense of joy. And facial patterns, facial expressions seem to be the triggers. See, a sincere smile will trigger certain parts of the brain that are aligned with happiness, where when you're frowning and you're really upset, sometimes just the frown by itself can switch on certain centers of the brain that cause you to feel, well, not so good, so to speak. And movement seems to have the effect on the brain integrating both hemispheres, decreasing the dominance of certain areas that seem to be most active when we're feeling in a way we don't want to feel because, well, it doesn't feel good. Let's put it that way. So sometimes just by moving and certain types of movement, like challenges balance, proprioception, if you will, moving through 3 dimensions of space, those types of movement not only help us decrease or mitigate the emotions that we don't want to feel, but if you take a look at Dr. In his book Spark, a lot of those types of movement patterns can over time enhance cognitive function, can upregulate the centers of the brain that we use for critical thinking. And that's important because whenever we're feeling the way we don't want to feel, we're feeling very reactive, predominantly fearful, angry, those centers of our brain do not have as much control over the emotional brain as the emotional brain, which gets us into trouble sometimes. When we do things and think, oh, why did I do that? I always do that when I'm feeling so, yeah, because you're not thinking. And because the emotional brain has more control over your executive centers of the brain, and the executive centers of the brain have over the emotional brain. And that's very important for survival, but it's not very convenient when we're on a new diet program or we start a new exercise program.
Great answer, great answer. So with that in mind, when anyone's faced with that piece of chocolate cake, that temptation that's hard to resist, what's the brain's natural response in the absence of any direct behavioural change strategy?
Well, if you're looking at a piece of chocolate cake, you ever wonder why people don't intensely crave salads? I mean, I've never had anyone come to me and sit down and go, oh, you know what, if I could just stop eating all those apples, my life would be perfect. When you're dealing with something that's rich in chocolate, very, very high in refined sugar, what that does is it spikes serotonin quickly. Now, serotonin decreases feelings of stress and anxiety. So, I'm not saying that people are self-medicating, that's a stretch, but a lot of times the foods that we choose them because they change the way we feel rapidly. So a good question to ask is, one, what are the foods that really I crave the most? Is it the pizza? Is it the meat pie? Is it the chocolate cake? And that's a good one, isn't it? Second would be, well, what's my emotional state that I'm in? Do I crave that? Do I crave that when I'm afraid, worried? Do I crave it when I'm just so stressed out of my mind? Somebody just hand me a chocolate cake. And what environment am I in? Do I tend to reach for my trigger foods when I'm alone? or when I'm out with my mates. Because it's more of a social thing. And if I understand what my trigger food is, what I'm feeling when I'm most likely to reach for, and where I am, well, now I have some specificity. So the next thing we can do is set up, the next time I feel like reaching for a piece of cake, what are some other things I can do instead that allow me to decrease stress or feel the way I want to feel? But instead of using the cake to feel that way, I can use laughter. I can use movement. I can just go for a walk. I can just connect with somebody. And some people would say, well, that doesn't always work, does it? Okay, I'm reaching for a chocolate cake. No, I'm going to exercise instead, or I'll watch a comedy. Change my mood that way. Well, it brings me to the very last point, which is any part of change. If you take a look at any change model, is recidivism or relapse. You need to be really clear that sometimes we're going to set a goal, which is, okay, I'm not going to reach for that cake. I'm going to do strategy X instead, and we're going to fall short of that. We're going to actually reach for the cake. And a very important question to ask is, what does that mean? If it means I'm not disciplined, I'm a failure, I'm always going to be fat, which it's questionable, the reality of that, but if that's what it means, we're much more likely to repeat those patterns. If it means, you know what, I really fell short. I set a goal to do something and I didn't do it. It's not what I did. Why did I do that? What can I learn from that? And how can I use that in the future? That's way more powerful of a strategy. Because you reach for a cake, it doesn't mean you're not disciplined. It doesn't mean you're worthless and hopeless. It means you simply reached for a piece of cake when previously you thought that's not the best strategy. So for a lot of people, an 80-20 type of agreement really works. Where if 80% of the time I do the things that are in correspondence with the outcomes I desire, and 20% of the time I don't do them, instead of going, oh, that's horrible, what if we said, that's interesting, why'd that happen? And enjoy the cake. So you know what? To get to your goals, it doesn't mean I have to give up cake forever. I mean, why would you do that? But someone who 80% of the time makes the wrong choice and 20% of the time makes the right choice, who can flip that to 80% of the time my choices are in correspondence with my desired outcome and 20% are not, well, that's progress. And progression in any cycle of change is far more realistic, effective, and less painful than striving for perfection. So it's progression, not perfection, on the way to being who we're capable of becoming, so we can have what we're setting out to achieve.